Step out of the vehicle, now.
I have not done anything. I am not resisting. Why am I being detained?
People always got something to say to the cops. Go on, out.
I'm asking for your badge number. I have my
badge number? That's funny. Nobody's coming for you out here.
At exactly 6:22 p.m. on a quiet Tuesday evening on Millbrook Road in Hargrove County, Georgia, a traffic stop that should have lasted 5 minutes turned into a 41-minute nightmare that would shake an entire sheriff's department to its core. The body camera footage, the dash camera footage, and a civilian recording from a neighbor's front porch captured every single second, every word spoken, every command given, and every piece of broken safety glass that fell into the lap of a man who had done absolutely nothing wrong. But this wasn't your typical traffic stop video. This was different. This was a decorated United States Army veteran, a high school history teacher, a varsity football coach, a father of 2 daughters, a man who spent 12 years serving this country overseas and came home to serve his community in a classroom, sitting with both hands visible on his steering wheel, speaking calmly, clearly, and respectfully, and still having his driver's side window smashed in front of his own neighborhood. What happened next would shock the Hargrove County community, spark a national conversation about pretextual stops, racial profiling, and excessive force, and prove that knowing your rights, staying calm, and documenting everything can be the difference between justice and silence. Before we continue, can you do me a favor? Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. This story gets even more intense, and you don't want to miss what happens next. Marcus Webb was not your average 39-year-old. While most people his age were focused on mortgages, weekend plans, and catching up on sleep, Marcus Webb had already lived 3 lifetimes worth of discipline, sacrifice, and service. He was born and raised in Hargrove County, Georgia, the same county where this story takes place. He grew up in a modest home on the east side of town, the second of 4 children, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs and made sure all 4 of her kids understood one thing above everything else. Conduct yourself with dignity, no matter what the world throws at you. That lesson would prove to be the most important thing Marcus ever learned. At 18, Marcus enlisted in the United States Army. He served 3 combat tours, 2 in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan, rising to the rank of staff sergeant. He was responsible for the lives of soldiers under his command. He was trained in high-pressure decision-making. He was trained to stay calm when everything around him was chaos. He was trained to follow lawful orders and to recognize when an order crossed a line. After 12 years of active duty, Marcus was honorably discharged with multiple commendations, including the Army Commendation Medal and the Combat Action Badge. When he came home to Hargrove County, he didn't rest. He enrolled in night school, earned his teaching certification, and took a job at Hargrove County High School teaching 11th grade American history. Within 2 years, he was also the head varsity football coach, turning a team that had lost 17 straight games into a regional finalist. His players called him Coach Webb. His students called him Mr. Webb. His colleagues called him one of the best teachers in the building. His daughters called him Dad. Nobody in that town had a bad word to say about Marcus Webb. And on the night of Tuesday, October 14th, he was driving home from a school board meeting where he had just presented a proposal for updated history curriculum materials. He was wearing a collared shirt and slacks. He had a leather portfolio folder on the passenger seat. He was listening to a gospel radio station. He was 6 minutes from his front door. On the evening of October 14th, Marcus Webb left the Hargrove County School District Administrative Building at approximately 6:08 p.m. The sun had already dipped below the tree line, painting the Georgia sky in long, fading streaks of amber and deep purple. The air was cool for October, that particular kind of autumn evening where everything smells faintly of dry leaves and the day feels like it's finally letting go. Marcus rolled down his window halfway. He was relaxed. He was proud. The school board had responded positively to his curriculum proposal, and his mind was already drifting toward getting home, hugging his daughters, and eating whatever his mother-in-law had cooked for dinner. He turned onto Millbrook Road at 6:19 p.m. Millbrook Road is a 2-lane residential street that cuts through a predominantly black neighborhood on the southwest side of Hargrove County. It is the street Marcus grew up on. It is the street his mother still lives on. He had driven it thousands of times. He knew every pothole, every stop sign, every familiar porch light. He was not speeding. He was not swerving. His registration was current, His inspection was valid, his insurance was active, and every single light on his 2019 Honda Accord was functioning perfectly. He was simply a man driving home from work, following every rule of the road exactly as written. Then the blue lights came on behind him. Marcus glanced in his rearview mirror. His heart didn't race with panic. It raced with recognition. He had been stopped before. He had been stopped on this same road before. He took a breath the way his drill sergeant had taught him to take a breath before a high-stress situation. He pulled over smoothly, came to a complete stop, turned off his radio, placed both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, and waited. The officer who approached Marcus Webb's vehicle that night was Craig Tatum, a 34-year-old deputy with the Hargrove County Sheriff's Department. Tatum had been with the department for 8 years, assigned primarily to patrol on the southwest side of the county. He had received 2 commendations for drug seizures and 1 written reprimand for conduct during a 2021 traffic stop. A reprimand that, as we will learn later, was buried so quietly that most of his supervisors claimed they had never seen it. To Officer Tatum, this was a routine stop, or at least that was what he would later claim. Tatum approached the driver's side of the vehicle. The body camera was rolling. "License and registration," Tatum said, his tone carrying the particular kind of impatience that suggests the conversation is already an inconvenience before it has even begun. Marcus responded without moving his hands. "Good evening, officer. Before I reach for anything, I want to let you know my wallet is in my back left pocket and my registration is in the glove box. I'm going to move slowly. Is that okay?" This is textbook. This is exactly what every legal expert, every civil rights attorney, and every defensive driving course tells you to do. Announce your movements. Stay calm. Be cooperative. Marcus did everything right from the very first second. "Go ahead," Tatum said. Marcus produced his license and registration smoothly and handed them over. Then he asked the question that seemed to irritate Officer Tatum more than anything else Marcus did that entire night. He asked, simply and politely, "May I ask what the reason for the stop was?" This is where things started to go wrong. Not because the question was inappropriate, not because it was aggressive, not because it was confrontational in any way. It was a completely lawful question. Every driver in the United States has the right to know why they have been stopped. But Officer Tatum's response told you everything you needed to know about what kind of stop this actually was. "You fit the description of a suspect we're looking for in the area," Tatum said. Marcus kept his hands visible. His voice did not change. "I understand. Can you tell me what the suspect is described as, so I can understand why you stopped me specifically?" Tatum ignored the question. "Step out of the vehicle, sir." Marcus did not move. Not out of defiance, but out of lawful, informed caution. "Officer, I want to make sure I understand correctly. Am I being detained, or am I free to go?" "You are being detained." "Okay. Then I'd like to understand the legal basis for my detention. What crime am I suspected of committing?" And right there, right in that moment, is where any trained professional law enforcement officer would have provided a clear, articulable answer. Because under the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution, and under the Supreme Court's ruling in Terry v. Ohio, a law enforcement officer must have reasonable, articulable suspicion that a person has committed, is committing, or is about to commit a crime before they can lawfully detain that person. Fitting a vague description of an unknown suspect in a general area is not, by itself, legally sufficient grounds for detention. Officer Tatum either didn't know that, or he simply didn't care. "I said get out of the vehicle," Tatum repeated. "Officer, I am not refusing to cooperate. I am asking a lawful question. My hands are on the steering wheel. I am not a threat. I am simply asking you to articulate your reasonable suspicion." Quick question for you watching. If you were sitting in that car, hands on the steering wheel, having done absolutely nothing wrong, what would you do? Drop a comment below. I genuinely want to know. Tatum's voice shifted. You could hear it in the body camera audio. The slow crawl from impatience into something that sounded a lot more like anger. "Sir, this is your last warning. Exit the vehicle." "I am a United States Army veteran," Marcus said, his voice still completely level. "I have served this country for 12 years. I am a teacher at Hargrove County High School. I live 2 blocks from here. I am asking you, calmly, respectfully, and lawfully, what is your reasonable, articulable suspicion for this stop and this detention? I am not moving until that question is answered, because I have the right to understand why I am being detained." This is the moment everything changed. Because instead of answering the question, instead of getting on his radio to verify the description of the suspect, instead of doing any of the things that a professional law enforcement officer is trained to do in exactly this type of situation. Officer Craig Tatum walked back to his patrol vehicle, retrieved his department-issued window punch, walked back to the driver's side of Marcus Webb's 2019 Honda Accord, and without a single additional word of warning, shattered the driver's side window. The sound of the glass exploding inward was captured on 3 separate recordings. A neighbor named Diane Porter, who had been sitting on her front porch when the patrol car pulled over, had begun recording on her phone the moment she recognized Marcus's car. She later told investigators that the sound made her physically flinch. "I've lived on this street for 31 years, she told them. "I have never seen anything like that." Glass rained across Marcus Webb's left arm, his lap, and his leather portfolio folder on the passenger seat, the folder that contained his school board curriculum proposal. His daughter's artwork was on the cover of that folder. He had laminated it. Marcus did not flinch. He did not yell. He did not reach for anything. He sat perfectly still with glass in his lap and said, calmly, clearly on camera, "I need you to understand that I have done nothing wrong. I need you to understand that this is all being recorded, and I need you to understand that I will be filing a formal complaint against you before this night is over." Tatum reached through the broken window and attempted to unlock the door. As he did, his radio crackled. And the voice that came through that radio is the voice that over 14 million people across the internet would later hear replayed in slow motion, over and over again. Dispatch clearly over the radio. Unit 7. Be advised, your suspect is in custody. Repeat, suspect is in custody. Has been since 5:40 p.m. The stop happened at 6:22 p.m. The suspect Tatum was allegedly looking for had been in custody for 42 minutes before Tatum ever turned on his blue lights. Officer Craig Tatum stood at the broken window of Marcus Webb's car and said absolutely nothing for 11 full seconds. You can count them on the body camera footage. 11 seconds of silence while a man with glass in his lap waited for an explanation that never came. Now, most people who find themselves sitting in a car with a shattered window, glass on their clothes, and a law enforcement officer who just received confirmation over the radio that the entire stop was baseless. Most people might cry. Most people might yell. Most people might freeze entirely and not know what to do next. Marcus Webb was not most people. Marcus reached carefully into his portfolio folder, moving slowly, narrating every movement for the camera, and retrieved a notepad and pen. Right there, on the side of Millbrook Road with glass on his lap, he began writing. He wrote down the officer's badge number, which was visible on the body camera footage. He wrote down the exact time displayed on his car's dashboard. He wrote the patrol car's unit number. He wrote down the exact words Tatum had said to him, in order, as best as he could reconstruct them from memory. He asked Tatum, politely, to confirm the spelling of his last name. Tatum did not respond. Marcus wrote down that Tatum refused to confirm his name. Then Marcus did something that would prove to be the single most important decision of the entire night. He called his attorney. Right there on the side of the road with Officer Tatum still standing at his broken window, Marcus called the law offices of Patterson and Green, a civil rights firm based in Atlanta that he had known about for years because they had represented a family member in a prior case. He got the after-hours voicemail and left a detailed, calm, methodical message describing every element of what had just occurred, including the dispatch confirmation, the badge number, the time, and the location. That voicemail would later become part of the official evidence file. Marcus was not arrested. He was not charged with anything. After the dispatch confirmation came through, Officer Tatum stepped back from the vehicle, returned to his patrol car, sat inside for approximately 3 minutes, again all on camera, and then drove away. He did not apologize. He did not offer to explain anything. He did not call for assistance to help Marcus deal with a broken car window on the side of the road at night. He simply drove away. Marcus sat in his car for a moment. He looked at the glass on the passenger seat. He looked at his daughter's artwork on the laminated folder cover. Then he picked up his phone and called his wife. He told her what happened. He told her he was okay. He told her he would be home soon. And then, before he drove anywhere, he documented the broken window with his phone camera from multiple angles, capturing the exact pattern of the shatter, the glass on the interior, and the timestamp on his phone, confirming when the documentation occurred. He drove the 6 minutes home. He walked inside, he hugged his daughters, and then he sat down at his kitchen table and began writing a formal complaint against Officer Craig Tatum and the Hargrove County Sheriff's Department. His complaint wasn't just a written statement. It was a 14-page 14-page document. 14 pages, single-spaced, that read like something a constitutional law professor would submit as evidence in a federal civil rights case. It referenced specific case law. It cited the Fourth Amendment verbatim. It documented every exchange in chronological order, cross-referenced with the exact timestamps he had captured on his notepad. It included a section specifically addressing the dispatch confirmation and the implications of Tatum having deployed a window punch against a compliant, non-threatening detainee after reasonable suspicion had already been undermined by the nature of a vague descriptive match alone, and completely destroyed by the dispatch confirmation of the suspect's prior custody. He submitted that complaint electronically at 11:47 p.m., less than 6 hours after the stop occurred. Do you think the Hargrove County Sheriff's Department did enough with that complaint? Let me know in the comments, because what happened next is going to tell you a lot about how these systems work. The Hargrove County Sheriff's Department received Marcus Webb's complaint on a Wednesday morning. By Thursday afternoon, less than 36 hours later, Officer Craig Tatum had been placed on administrative leave with pay pending an internal affairs investigation. This was not normal. These investigations typically take weeks just to be formally opened. Most complainants wait months before they even receive an acknowledgement letter. But Marcus Webb's 14-page complaint was so detailed, so legally precise, and so comprehensively documented that the department's legal counsel reportedly read it and immediately advised the sheriff that the matter required urgent attention. The internal affairs investigator assigned to the case was Lieutenant Donna Marsh, a 19-year department veteran who had investigated over 60 use-of-force complaints in her career. She later told investigators for a civil review board that she had never, in 19 years, seen a civilian complaint with that level of legal precision and documentary evidence. She said she pulled up the body camera footage, watched it once, then watched it again, then called her supervisor in and watched it a third time together. What the footage confirmed was significant. The body camera footage confirmed that Marcus Webb's hands were visible on the steering wheel for the entirety of the stop prior to the window breach. It confirmed that he announced every movement before making it. It confirmed that he asked lawful questions in a calm, non-threatening tone throughout. It confirmed that Officer Tatum never provided a specific, articulable description of the suspect he claimed Marcus matched. It confirmed that Tatum retrieved the window punch from his patrol vehicle, meaning the decision to breach the window was premeditated, not reactive, and it confirmed the dispatch radio transmission, audible on the body camera audio, clearly stating that the suspect had been in custody since 5:40 p.m. But there was something else in the footage that made this case even more serious. When investigators reviewed Tatum's dash camera footage from his patrol vehicle, they discovered something that had not been mentioned anywhere in Tatum's own incident report. Before Tatum turned on his blue lights to initiate the stop of Marcus Webb's vehicle, he had been on his patrol vehicle's computer terminal. The computer access log, pulled as part of the investigation, showed that at 6:17 p.m., 5 minutes before the stop, Tatum had run the license plate of Marcus's vehicle. The query returned Marcus Webb's name, his address, his vehicle registration, and his clean record. No warrants, no priors, nothing. Tatum had that information before he ever turned on his lights. He knew, before the stop even began, that the owner of that vehicle had no record whatsoever, and he stopped him anyway. Investigators also pulled the full dispatch log for the suspect Tatum claimed Marcus resembled. The suspect in question was described as a black male in his early 20s, approximately 5 feet 8 inches tall, wearing a red hoodie, last seen on foot on the north side of the county, more than 4 miles from Millbrook Road. Marcus Webb is 39 years old, 6 feet 1 inch tall, was wearing a collared dress shirt, and was inside a vehicle. The overlap in the description was, to use Lieutenant Marsh's own words in her report, insufficient to establish any reasonable basis for believing the stopped individual was the wanted suspect. Marcus Webb was stopped because he was a black man driving through his own neighborhood. The evidence, when laid out in full, made that conclusion very difficult to argue against. The investigation took 23 days in total. That is extraordinarily fast for a use-of-force investigation involving a potential civil rights component. Most comparable investigations take 4 to 6 months. But the evidence in this case was not complicated. Everything was documented. Everything was on camera. Everything was undeniable. And Marcus Webb's 14-page complaint had essentially done half of the investigator's job for them. The Hargrove County Sheriff's Department's official findings were released in a written statement on November 6th. The findings were direct. The department found that Officer Tatum failed to articulate reasonable suspicion for the initial stop as documented in his incident report, which omitted the prior plate query. The department found that Tatum's use of a window punch against a compliant, non-aggressive detainee constituted an unreasonable use of force under department policy and under the Fourth Amendment standard. The department found that Tatum's incident report contained material omissions allegations that, taken together, constituted a failure of the duty of honesty required of all sworn officers, and the department found that Tatum's conduct was inconsistent with the standards of professional law enforcement and reflected poorly on the department as a whole. The department recommended termination. Officer Craig Tatum did not wait to be formally fired. He submitted his resignation on November 4th, 2 days before the official findings were published. His 8-year career with the Hargrove County Sheriff's Department ended because of a 41-minute traffic stop on a quiet residential road. A stop where the man he pulled over had done nothing wrong. A stop where the suspect he claimed to be looking for had been in custody for 42 minutes before the stop even began. A stop that lasted long enough for a man's car window to be smashed in his own neighborhood while his daughters waited for him at home. The Hargrove County Sheriff's Department initially declined to release the body camera footage publicly, citing the ongoing nature of the internal review process. Marcus Webb's attorney, the same civil rights firm he had called from the side of the road that night, filed a public records request for the footage within 72 hours of the incident. When the department failed to respond within the statutory time frame, the firm filed for an emergency judicial order compelling the release. The footage was released publicly on November 8th, 2 days after the department's official findings were published. When the footage hit the internet, it moved fast. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed more than 14 million times across multiple platforms. National news outlets covered it. Civil rights organizations issued statements. Legal commentators broke it down frame by frame on YouTube and podcasts. 3 law school professors used clips from the footage in their constitutional law classes within the same week. The moment of dispatch confirming the suspect's prior custody, played over the sound of breaking glass, became one of the most shared clips in that entire news cycle. Some people praised Marcus for his composure, his documentation, and his refusal to be intimidated. Others criticized him online, saying he should have just gotten out of the vehicle and that he made the situation worse by asking questions. Some said his insistence on knowing the legal basis of the stop put him in unnecessary danger. Others pointed out that his composure and documentation were the very things that made accountability possible. Some said the officer was just doing his job under pressure. Others noted that his job required him to know at minimum whether the suspect he was looking for was still outstanding before destroying a compliant citizen's property. But here's what nobody could deny. Marcus Webb was right about everything. His questions were lawful. His conduct was lawful. His documentation was thorough and legitimate. And dispatch had confirmed the truth before the glass even finished falling. Following the termination of Officer Craig Tatum and the public release of the footage, the Hargrove County Sheriff's Department announced a series of policy and training changes. The department mandated that all patrol officers complete an updated constitutional law training course with specific emphasis on Fourth Amendment stop and detention standards before returning to active duty. The department implemented a new protocol requiring officers to verbally confirm with dispatch the current status of any suspect before initiating a stop based on a suspect description match. The department updated its use of force policy to include explicit prohibitions against deploying a window punch on a compliant, non-aggressive detainee in a non-emergency situation. The department also launched a formal review of all use of force complaints filed against Hargrove County deputies over the preceding 5 years. That final review is where things got significantly more complicated. After the footage went viral, 7 additional individuals came forward to file complaints against Officer Tatum specifically, all describing stops with similar characteristics. All described being stopped in the southwest quadrant of the county. All described Tatum's tone as impatient and dismissive from the very beginning of the encounter. 3 of them described being asked to exit their vehicles without being given a reason. None of them had been charged with any crime as a result of their stops. This raised a question that the department was not able to avoid. If these stops had been happening for years and a prior written reprimand already existed in Tatum's file from 2021, what exactly had the department's supervision structure been doing? Who reviewed his stop data? Who analyzed the pattern? Who connected the dots? And this story, being one high-profile case with 3 cameras rolling, is a very specific set of circumstances. How many stops like this happened where there was no body camera, no neighbor on the porch, no attorney on speed dial? As of today, Marcus Webb continues to teach 11th grade American history at Hargrove County High School. He was named Teacher of the Year by the Hargrove County School District in the spring following the incident. His football team advanced to the state semifinals. He gave a keynote address at a civil rights law symposium in Atlanta, speaking specifically about the role that documentation, composure, and legal literacy played in his case. He partnered with a local nonprofit to develop a community workshop called Know the Road, a free program designed to teach residents about their constitutional rights during traffic stops, including how to document encounters safely and effectively. He also filed a civil lawsuit against the Hargrove County Sheriff's Department and Officer Craig Tatum individually. The lawsuit alleged violation of his Fourth Amendment rights, unlawful use of force, and failure of supervision. The Hargrove County government agreed to a settlement of $185,000, which Marcus announced he was using partially to fund the expansion of the Know the Road program into 3 neighboring counties. As for Officer Craig Tatum, as of the last available public record, he is no longer employed in any law enforcement capacity. His law enforcement certification was reviewed by the Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council following the department's findings. The decertification proceeding, if completed, would permanently prevent him from serving as a law enforcement officer in the state of Georgia. Here's a question for you. If you were sitting in that car, on the street you grew up on, coming home from a meeting where you just tried to make your community's schools better, would you have handled it the way Marcus did? Be honest. Comment below. Because I think most of us would like to believe we would, but the reality of that situation in real time is something very few people are truly prepared for. Let's talk about the bigger picture here, because this story isn't just about Marcus Webb and Craig Tatum. It's about what happens when institutional power operates without accountability. It's about the gap between what the law says and what people actually experience in real time on real roads. And it's about what becomes possible when a person knows their rights well enough to defend them calmly, on camera, in the most stressful possible circumstances. Most people do not know the specific legal standard that governs whether a police officer can lawfully stop and detain them. Most people have never read Terry v. Ohio. Most people have never thought about what reasonable articulable suspicion actually means and how it differs from a hunch or a vague descriptive match. And some law enforcement officers, not all, but some, count on exactly that ignorance. They count on people being too scared, too overwhelmed, or too uncertain of their rights to ask a simple, lawful question. When you encounter someone like Marcus Webb, someone who knows the standard, who stays calm enough to apply it in real time, who documents everything from the moment the blue lights come on, the dynamic shifts, the uniform does not automatically win, the authority does not automatically override the right, knowledge becomes the equalizer.